Om. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रीगीताध्यानम् ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरहः प्रीतीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमलप्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः सुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So thank you for your patience to wait for 2 weeks for me while I did a vacation trip, which is not exactly something which should be ideal, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, but thank you for that. Thank you for the patience. So we are resuming chapter 18, and just a quick revision of what we did in the last satsang. So Bhagavan enumerates the 5 causes or constituents of all and any action. Essentially, what Bhagavan is doing is that he is setting the premise to state that the Supreme Self is beyond action. It is Akarta. And the five aspects or causes, constituents that he lists out are Adhishthanam, which is the body or the being where the other four aspects are housed, are located. This body is the one that helps action take place. The action takes place through this body because it's the gateway for perception, which is the input, and what is the output in terms of the responses to leave. So that's how the Adhishthanam is built. Then we have Karta. Karta is the individuality or the ego. It is the identifying thought. The thought that I am thinking, I am doing, I am speaking, I am working, whatever it may be, that aspect of I am, that individuality, right? This is the agent that actually records the stimuli that come in and the responses that go out. That is what the Karta does. Then we have the Karanam. Karanam are the instruments. The instruments that help perceive the stimuli and instruments that help affect responses through action. That is the Karanam. And we saw that these are the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. The Jnanendriyas, which are the Shrotra or hearing faculty, the Chakshu or the sight faculty, Rasana or the taste faculty, Tvak or the touch faculty, and Grahana or the smell faculty. And the Karmendriya are the speech, Vak, Pani, grasping through the hand, Pada, locomotion through the legs, Payu, excretion, and Upastha, reproduction. These are organs of action. And also the Manas and Buddhi, that is also included in the Karmendriyas, the mind intellect. And then the third aspect was the Cheshta. The Cheshta are the physiological activities, those that give the source of energy, those that give energy, that enable functioning of the body. The Prana, which is respiration, in terms of movement, it is forward in momentum. The Apana or excretion or elimination, which in terms of movement is outward. The Samana or digestion, which is consolidatory in movement. Vyana or circulation, which is all around in terms of movement. And Udana or regurgitation, which is upward in terms of movement. And then Bhagavan said the fifth aspect is the Daivam. And he said the fifth is this. That is how he stated it, right? And there are different interpretations for what is Daivam and what it stands for. And we saw that some people call it the five great elements, the fire, space, water, air, and earth. Some people say it is the Jivatman, the Atma, which is within the Jiva. And some people say it is the Supreme Self, the Paramatman, the indweller. Right? Either way, whichever of these interpretations it may be, the Daivam is the presiding deity, the cosmic, that which is beyond, that factor which governs the other four of them. And then Bhagavan says that whatever action, yat karma, that one performs, prarabhate, these five elements are the causes of any and all action. Panchaita tasya hetavaha. And then he said that the self is actually alone, kevalam atmanam. And if a person believes that the self alone does, atmanam kevalam kartaram, that is the self alone does, compared to self is by itself, kevalam atmanam, then Bhagavan said that this is defective understanding. Durmatihi. Durmatihi also means perverted. So when you purposely, choose to espouse the defective understanding. And then he also called it akrita buddhitvat, which is that the intellect or the buddhi may not be trained. It requires more training. It requires more learning. And one who is of nature which is not dwelling on I all the time. One who is not egoistic in nature. Nahankrito bhavaha, where there is no ahankara. That kind of bhava. One whose intelligence is not clouded. Buddhihi na lipyate. It's not veiled. The intelligence is vibrant and active. And Bhagavan says that this kind of a person, even if this person slays is not a doer, is not a slayer, and is not bound. Neither is this person a karta, nor is this person a bhokta. Neither the person does, nor the person experiences or enjoys what is the result of whatever has been done. And this is, we saw, the ultimate sannyasa, giving up the selves of individuality. That is the ultimate sannyasa. All other types of sannyasa that we have read about, they are more preparatory in nature. So when Bhagavan uses the term nahanti, it stands for not being a karta. Nahanti actually translates to does not slay. And na nibhatyate, it means is not bound by that action. That implies not being a bhokta, the enjoyer of the fruits of the action. And for this kind of a person, the karma phala is not there. We saw karma phala was anishtam, ishtam, mishram, right? All these three varieties of karma phala are not there. So Bhagavan has described the constituents that make up action. Now he takes up the impulses to karma or action and the basis of karma in the next verse. Let us go to verse 18.
Jnanam niyam pariknyata
Jnanam neyam pariknyata
trividha karma chodana
vividha karma chodana
karanam karma karteti
karanam karma karteti
trividha karma sangraha
trividha karma sangraha.
Jnanam jneyam pariknyata trividha karma chodana karanam karma karteti trividha karma sangraha.
Jnanam is knowledge. Name is what is known through that knowledge. Parignyata is the one who knows, the knower. And Bhagavan says, iti, they are these, the knowledge, the known and the knower are the trividha, threefold. Chodana, impulse. Impulse to what? Karma, action. And he says, karanam, the instrument, karma, the action itself, and karta, the doer, the agent. Iti is used twice here. Iti is in the second sentence, karteti. Karteti means karta iti. So that is used twice. Once when we say that knowledge, known and knower are the, and instrument, action, agent are the. This is the beauty of poetry, right? So, and so the instrument, action and agent, they are the trividha, threefold, sangraha, basis of karma, action. So Bhagavan is saying knowledge, the known and the knower are the threefold impulse to action. The instrument, the action and the agent are the threefold basis of action. See, this is really beautiful. Huh? So I would request you to try to follow this through in terms of the depth of the discussion here, because Bhagavan is actually breaking it down. Normally we say I am doing, I am listening, I am talking. He is now trying to tell us exactly what is happening within the sense of I. So it's quite beautiful. This is something that one feels really nice, and one is able to relate to this aspect of the ego and the non-ego when we understand these verses really well. See, normally it may not be hard to relate, because the sense of I am doing is very, very strong in all of us. But in all of us, when we think of actions that we do, right, which are essentially, there is an intrinsic sense of purpose. We do something with a deep sense of purpose. And wherever we do that with a deep sense of purpose, where is the ego? Just think about it, okay? Especially when you're doing the action. And maybe some action that you have done with a deep sense of purpose. Did we have that thought of I? It's actually not there. It's not at play at all. And the intellect is devoted to the higher cause. There is no sense of, I am doing. And when we think of those kind of actions, this verse makes immediate sense. So why not all the time is the question that we have to understand. See, any intense pursuit, where there is depth and there is devotion to the higher cause. Take a marathon race, preparation for a really tough examination, an intricate surgery, staying awake for a child, right? It becomes very clear to us when we evaluate these kind of actions, and there are so many, infinite such actions that we take up, that the self, the ego aspect of the self, that is not at play at all. And the trigger to the action and basis of the action, as Bhagavan describes, karma chodana, karma sangraha, they become very clear. See, to give you an example, to explain this concept, we may all have read recently, about this doctor who ran a few kilometers to the hospital in Bangalore to perform a surgery. It was a critical operation. There was traffic. We all know about the famous Bangalore traffic. He just left the car there, got out and ran to the hospital, jogged to the hospital, right? What is it that made him do such a thing? What was the trigger and what was the basis? So if you break it down, jnanam, okay, the knowledge of the situation regarding the traffic. And what time would it take for him, if he were driving, to reach the operation theater, right, in his car, compared to the time it would take if he ran that distance. That knowledge. Additionally, also the knowledge of when he is required to be there, because it's a critical operation. Everything has been set up there in the OT. There are other, dependencies and other people who are waiting for him. Plus, the patient needs to undergo at that time. It is critical in terms of time for the patient. That also is the knowledge. The person, the surgeon who is going to perform the operation, the person who knows about this traffic condition and the time taken when he is required to be there, one who has the knowledge is the parigyata. He is the knower. And this knowledge about these conditions that we just described, that is the neyam, or what is known. These three aspects are the ones that triggered the action of getting down and running from the car. These are the Trivida Karma Chodana. I don't think the doctor would have ever thought, I have to run, I have to go. All that sense of ego would not have been there. And the same knower, the person who knew, the parigyata, that person becomes the karta, the doer, the agent who performs the action of getting down and running. It is the same, right? And the action itself, which is that of getting down and running, which is the karma. And the instrument, which are the pada, we just saw, right? The instruments, karanam. In this case, running, opening the car handle, hand, and then the feet running. They are the instruments. And these are the threefold basis of action. Trivida, karma, sangraha. So this is how Bhagavan is breaking it down. So what we have to understand is that within us, within the so-called I, there are instruments that are actually doing. Like we use instruments outside, like I'm using Zoom now. I'm using my iPad. So these are external instruments, so it is easy for us not to relate to these. Even these, without these, how will we have the satsang? Not possible, right? But when it comes to internal instruments, we confuse those with the sense of I, the ego. And these two triads, the karma chodana and the karma sangraha, if there is one, the other two are bound to be there. It's like a triangle. If there is one, triangle is there only if there are three sides to it. Otherwise, there is no triangle. So if one is there, the other two are bound to be. If jnanam is there, neyam and parigyata have to be there. Similarly, if karma is there, karanam and karta have to be there. And Bhagavan now culls the two triads into one single triad. This is also beautiful. Okay. And those are the knowledge, jnanam, the action, karma, and the parigyata or the karta, whoever you may take, basically the jivatman, the one who knows, and the same entity is the one who does. So Bhagavan calls it the karta, possibly because karta is the final action, right? You know first and then you do. So in fact, it is said that whatever we do, it's already done in the brain. Science also talks about it, right? Whatever is actually performed externally is already performed internally before it is performed externally. So the knowing comes before the doing. So Bhagavan culls these two into a one single triad, the jnanam, the karma, and the karta. The knowledge, the action, and the doer. Why does he do this? Again, very interesting. Because these are the three, among the six, if you see, these are the three that come under the influence of gunas. The nature of the person, the human nature, the sattvika, the rajasika, and the tamasika. They influence these three aspects. And we'll see a little later how the surgeon would have acted, if he were of different nature. Okay, the three gunas basically are the nature of the human beings. We have studied these in great detail. And Bhagavan, I want to spend some time putting this in context. Bhagavan covers possibly the most widely covered topic in the Bhagavad Gita is guna. Okay, whatever Sri Krishna has taught would be received basis of the guna of the person who is listening, the student. Maybe if you're not listening, that is a different guna altogether, right? So those who do not choose to listen. So the guna of the person is very, very important. In fact, every action we have seen, Bhagavan has said, every action is propelled by the person's nature. We are bound to act because of our nature. And this is possibly the reason why Bhagavan dwells on guna in great detail, examining it from various perspectives, various angles. So in chapter 3, Karma Yoga, Bhagavan introduces the concept and significance of guna. He says guna karma, the nature and the instruments that cause action. Guna karma, he calls them on the one hand, and vibhagayo. Vibhagayo is that which is distinct from guna karma, which is the pure consciousness. In chapter 14, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Bhagavan explains gunas in great detail and the aspect of transcending them. He says that the person who has gone beyond the gunas is the gunatita, and gunatita is the realized one. And then in chapter 17, Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Bhagavan explains 5 concepts in the context of gunas. Shraddha or faith is the first, ahara or food, yajna or sacrifice, dana or giving, and tapa, which is tapas. I will not use the word austerity. Tapa means tapas. We have studied 18 factors that define tapas. Okay, this is for the sadhaka. Earlier, the one who transcends the gunas is a gunatita, the realized. And the seeker or the practitioner, one who is trying to achieve. For that person, Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga is very, very critical. And the message for this person is discard tamas, completely let go of it. Eschew rajas, reduce as much as possible in your environment. The more, the better. And abide in sattva. That is the message. Now in chapter 18, why is Bhagavan now, leading? He is leading to the gunas, right? And moksha sannyasa yoga. Bhagavan says he describes 6 concepts in the context of gunas. And these are done to show that the self, the Atman, essentially is akarta, free of gunas. And these 6 are jnana or knowledge, karma, action, karta, the actor, the trivida that he does, he culled. And then he will also take up buddhi, understanding, dhriti, fortitude, and sukham, happiness. So these are the 6 aspects that he will take up and examine from the context of the nature of a human being, the sattvika, rajasika, and tamasika. It's a very, very beautiful and interesting study. So let's get on with it. We'll start with jnanam.
Jnanam karma cha karta cha.
Jnanam karma cha karta cha.
Tridaiva guna bhedataha.
Tridaiva guna bhedataha.
Prochyate guna sankhyane.
Prochyate guna sankhyane.
Yatavat shrunutanyapi.
Yatavat shrunutanyapi.
Jnanam karma cha karta cha. Tridaiva guna bhedataha. Prochyate guna sankhyane. Yatavat shrunutanyapi.
Jnanam, knowledge, cha, and karma, action, cha, and karta, actor. And Bhagavan says, guna sankhyane, in the signs of the gunas. Sankhya, we saw earlier, right? Sankhya is that which enumerates, that which explains in detail, which is signs. In the signs of the study of gunas, prochyate are declared, or rather, actually, it should come the other way. Declared in the signs of study of gunas. So, jnanam, karma, and karta, prochyate are declared in the study of the signs of gunas. Eva, to be of, tridaihi, three kinds. Guna bhedataha, according to the distinction among the gunas that we have studied in chapter 14. Right? Shrinu, listen, pay attention. Api, also. Tan, about them. Yathava, as they are. So Bhagavan is going to, see, guna is guna, as they are. That's why he uses the word yathava here. Guna is guna. It is nature. It is prakriti. It is part of nature. It comes through prakriti. So Bhagavan says, listen about them as they are. So he's saying knowledge, action, and actor are declared in the signs of gunas to be of three kinds, according to the distinction among the gunas. Listen about them also as they are. See, guna is the prevalence of temperament in a person's nature, right? The type of temperament that vary as per the nature of the person, and it affects how the person behaves. See, a tamasic, so that surgeon thing comes here again, okay? The tamasic tempered surgeon would have sat in that car and possibly gone to sleep. You know, surgeons are very tired, by the way, they work very hard, right? Or would have generally floundered, you know, what do I do? Be confused. There is traffic, I have to go there, what do I do? You know, people get restless. They are sitting there doing nothing other than getting restless. So a tamasic surgeon would have probably done that. A rajasic surgeon would have got very passionate and angry, possibly cursed the traffic situation, Bangalore, city, government, everybody, right? Fought with the neighboring cars, yelled at the others, those kind of behavior. This sattvic tempered surgeon who we read about decided to get down and run to where duty called. Now, see, even within the biography of one personality, you'll have all nature. The same sattvic surgeon was sattvic at that moment, could be rajasic or tamasic in other moments. So we have to understand that their different moods and behaviors express themselves at various times. That is why the lesson is for us to completely discard tamas and reduce rajas and adopt sattva. But in this case, the surgeon behaved in a very sattvic manner. And Bhagavan refers to guna sankhya, or the study of the signs of the gunas. And he will now proceed to explain jnanam or knowledge, karma or action, and karta, which is the doer or the knower, whichever the case may be, in various varieties of the gunas. So we will see that in the next verse.
Sarvabhuteshu yenaikam
Sarvabhuteshu yenaikam
bhavamavyayamikshate
bhavamavyayamikshate
avibhaktam vibhakteshu
avibhaktam vibhakteshu
tajnanam viddhi sattvikam
tajnanam viddhi sattvikam.
Sarvabhuteshu yenaikam bhavamavyayamikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajnanam viddhi sattvikam.
So viddhi, Bhagavan says, viddhi, no. Tad, that. Tad jnanam is the tad and jnanam. That jnanam, knowledge. Sattvikam, to be sattvika. Which knowledge to be sattvika? Yena, by which. Ikshate, one sees. See, we are going here and there, you know, in terms of word by word translation. Sarva bhuteshu, in all beings. Ekam, the one. Avyayam, immutable, unchangeable, bhavam, presence, avibhaktam, undivided, vibhakteshu, in the divided. So know that knowledge to be sattvika, by which one sees in all beings the one immutable presence, undivided in the divided. So sarva bhuteshu, see, all beings, they look very different from each other. In addition to looking very different, even the same class of beings look very different from each other. One puppy does not look like another puppy. One human being does not look like another human being, right? One cup does not look like another cup. And while they also look different, they also undergo changes. And we have seen this before earlier. The Shad Vikara, they are modifications that a Bhuta undergoes, which is the Shad Vikaras, or the 6 modifications are birth or Jayate, existence, sustenance or Asti, growth or Vardate, change or Viparinimate, decay or Apakshiyate, and Vinashyati or perishing. Anything that undergo these modifications is a Bhuta. And then there is the Ekam Bhavam Avyayam, the one changeless presence, immutable, undecayable, which is the reality. So on one side, all the creative elements which keep undergoing these changes. Even a rock in the Himalayas, over a period of time, perishes. Whereas there is this, on the other end, the Ekam Bhavam Avyayam, that changeless presence, that one changeless presence. Tad Jnanam Yena, that knowledge by which one sees Ikshate, that one presence in everything that is changing. The undivided in the divided. Avibhaktam vibhakteshu. Know that knowledge to be Sattvikam, Bhagavan says. So while the forms constituted by this body, mind, intellect, they are different in all elements of creation. Sattvika knowledge is that knowledge which recognizes within all these varieties that presence of that one changeless same reality. That is the essence, that one single essence in all of them. Remember, Bhagavan talked about this earlier, one of our sadhana also. Sutre Manigana Iva. So he is the sutra, the thread that is tying all the manis which are different, the whatever ornaments are there or whatever flowers are there in the garland. So that unseen thread that ties up the entire garland together, which is different. Each of the elements of that garland are different. So within creation, also we see, in our natural day-to-day life, we see that the space in all of the rooms is the same. The space in my room in America is the same as the space in your room in India. It's exactly the same. Ornaments may vary, will look different, but the gold or the silver or whatever is exactly the same. The light bulb and the fan are different, but the electricity that powers them is the same. Similarly, one soul that throbs in different elements of creation. And Bhagavan says, one that sees in this manner, that knowledge is Sattvika knowledge. And Avibhaktam Vibhakteshu, Bhagavan uses this term, Avibhaktam Vibhakteshu, the undivided in the divided. It is also interpreted as Avibhaktam, right? The bhakti part comes in here. Single pointed devotion towards that one changeless aspect, one changeless reality among all the variety. That knowledge is, or that understanding is Sattvic. Now Bhagavan goes on to the Rajasic knowledge.
Pritatvena tu yajnanam.
Pritatvena tu yajnanam.
Nana bhavan pritakvedan.
Nana bhavan pritakvedan.
Veti sarveshu bhuteshu.
Veti sarveshu bhuteshu.
Tajnanam vidhi rajasam.
Jnanam viddhi rajasam.
पृथक्त्वेन तु यज्ञानं नानाभावान् पृथग्विधान् वेत्ति सर्वेषु भूतेषु तज्ज्ञानं विद्धि राजसम्.
Two, but in contrast, yajnanam, that knowledge, veti, which sees, sarveshu, in all beings, bhuteshu, sarveshu bhuteshu, in all beings, prithak vidhan, various kinds, nana bhavan, of distinct entities, prithak tvena, due to their individuality, prithak tvena, viddhi, know, tad jnanam, that knowledge, rajasam, to be rajasic. So Bhagavan says, but in contrast to sattva, when he uses but that knowledge which sees in all beings various kinds of distinct entities because of their individuality, know that knowledge to be rajasika. Prithaktvena, since the body, mind and intellect appear different physically in nature as also the way they change in various beings, being to being, they appear different. Vetti nana bhavan prithak vidan, gives validity. Sees, vetti here is not just seeing as in just sight, also giving validity to that. Giving validity to what? The distinction, that variety in the various entities. See, the world is an assortment of innumerable types of varieties. And the passionate nature, the rajasika nature, gives validity only to the variety, ignores that one single presence which is inside. And thereby it is failing to recognize that substratum, not acknowledging it, not recognizing it. And this is the kind of intellect that divides living creatures into different classes, whether it is vegetation, whether it is animals, whether it is humans, whatever it may be. And also the human, which is the highest quote unquote intellect, the other classes are meant for our pleasing, our fulfill our desires, our passions, whatever it may be. Whether it is an animal or plant kingdom, they are there. Their existence, their creation is there to serve us in whichever way. That is the mentality. And even within humans, this is the Rajasic mentality. Americans, Indians, Chinese, Italians, okay, Sindhis, Gujaratis, Tamilians, Mallus, and so on and so forth. And we can see what is happening because of such divisive knowledge. This is nothing but knowledge. Humanity itself is divided. So from simple things, like when my granddaughter was born, I must say this here, So there were comments about how can you name her Noor? You're a Hindu. Okay, simple things like that, right? To larger aspects like racism, discrimination, all those kind of things, right? The very core of Sanatana Dharma, we have seen this earlier, right? The recognition of oneness in the entire world is the very core. Vasudhaivika Kudumbakam. The whole world is a single family. Vasudha means earth. Iva is one. Kudumbakam is family. The entire earth is one family. This concept urges people to practice acceptance and live in harmony with all other elements of creation. But the Rajasika mentality divides. The concept of plurality in contrast, because there is so much passion and there is so much selfish desire. And even this Atman, even that, the supreme that is within, that is also divided. My God is greater than your God. That also happens, right? Higher or lower based on the human's evolution. So if I consider myself higher than somebody else, my God is also higher than the God in the body of someone else. And this kind of a knowledge is classified as Rajasika. See, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, and I quote, seeing unity is knowledge. Seeing diversity is ignorance. So the Rajasika knowledge kind of sees the diversity in all elements of creation. Now Bhagavan continues to Tamasic knowledge.
Yattu krishnavade kasmin
Yattu kritsnavade kasmin
karye saktamahaitukam
karye saktamahaitukam
atatvartavadalpam cha
athatvarthavadalpam cha
tattamasamudahratam.
tattamasamudahritam.
Yattu krishnavade kasmin karye saktamahaitukam atatvartavadalpam cha tattamasamudahratam.
Again, two, but in contrast to the earlier, yat, that knowledge. Yat stands for knowledge. Yat, that. Saktam, which clings. Ekasmin, to one single. Karye, act. Kritsnavad, as if it were whole. Ahaitukam, without reason. Atatvarthavad, without meaning. Cha, and alpam, insignificant. Tat, that. Udahritam is declared tamasam, as tamasic. So Bhagavan says, but that knowledge which clings to one single act as if it were whole, without reason, without meaning, and insignificant, is declared as tamasic. See, people who are completely bound to their BMI, we saw in the introductory session, right? We described the body, mind, and intellect, and this aspect of being just bound to one's own body, mind, and intellect, ignoring whatever is external to it, right? My way or highway. That kind of an attitude, extreme my way or highway attitude. Living in ignorance of everything beyond, or choosing purposely to ignore that whatever else is beyond. So even if there is some awareness, you deny, there is denial. That is delusion, right? Because everything else is also there. So stuck in this paradigm, these kind of people cling to acts, karye, that Bhagavan says, karye. They cling to those acts of their own body, mind, and intellect. Cling to acts of the body, acts of the thought, their judgment, and so on and so forth, right? As if it were everything. My way or the highway, right? My way, that's everything. Take it or leave it. That which is temporary, which is perishing, we all know. And that perishing aspect is mistaken for everything that matters. That is what it is all. When it is obvious that all elements of creation are going to go anyway, they are ephemeral, clinging on to them as if they are permanent. Ahaitukam. Without any reason. When we all know that it is impermanent, but we cling on to it as if it is permanent. Since there is no greater untruth in this, because it's not true, it's not permanent. That is why it is without meaning, which is atatvarthavad. And since the basis of this is a very narrow view, my view, that is why it is alpam. And Bhagavan says, tamasam udahritam. Such knowledge is declared as tamasic. So in summary, tamasic knowledge is based on self-centeredness, ignoring everything else other than my own paradigm. Rajasic knowledge is based on the diversity in creation. And sattvic knowledge is based on unity in diversity. The diversity is there, but that one single element that unites all the diverse elements, it is based on that unity, that one reality. Now Bhagavan takes up the threefold nature of action, karma.
Niyatam sangarahitam
Niyatam sangarahitam
aragattveshatah kritam
aragadveshatah kritam
aphala prepsuna karma
aphala prepsuna karma
yat tat satvikam uchyate.
yat tat satvikam uchyate.
Niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshatah kritam apala prepsuna karma Yat tat sattvikamudhyate.
Tat, that, niyatam, obligatory, karma, action, yat, which, kritam, is done, sangarahitam, without attachment, aragadveshatah, without likes or dislikes, aphala prepsuna, by one not seeking fruits, aphala, no phala, aphala prepsuna, one by one not seeking fruits, uchyate, is said to be satvikam, satvika. That obligatory action which is done without attachment, without likes or dislikes, by one not seeking fruits, is said to be sattvika. See, breathing is indispensable to life. Niyatam karma. We have read in detail about niyatam karma, right? It's actually indispensable, not just obligatory. Yes, it is obligatory, because if you're not going to breathe, you're not going to exist, right? So, and it is done without attachment. Sangarahitam. There is no attachment, without, and it is also done without likes or dislikes. Aragad dveshataha. There is no liking or disliking in breathing. Also, the person who is breathing is not thinking, I'm going to take a breath, please keep me alive. I'm going to take a breath, let me do XYZ, whatever, right? So, essentially not seeking of fruits. Aphala prepsuna. So, breathing is a great example. Done completely without, it's a niyatam karma. There is no sangha, araga dveshata, no like or dislike, and no desire for fruits, apala prepsuna. Any obligatory action, any niyatam karma also ought to be performed in this manner. That is what Bhagavan is saying. Obligatory action, we have seen, varies according to the state and the position of a person in life. Arjuna now is on the verge where he has to wage a righteous war and protect citizens against tyranny. It is very, very clear. As well as punish the perpetuators. He has to do that. This is ordained duty for him. And for all of us, we have various, this is an extreme example. So Bhagavan takes, that's why Bhagavad Gita is beautiful. It's set in a stage which is extreme in nature. So every individual in society has a duty to discharge, right? And action of this caliber, where it is completely executed faithfully and incessantly as we do breathing, that kind of an action is upheld as sattvic. So there's an interesting story that kind of says this. You know, Gandhiji had this assistant come teacher. The person was his assistant and also his teacher. Assistant because this person was the translator for Gandhiji, especially South Indian languages. So he used to translate and also respond letters. He used to write letters for Gandhiji when whatever he dictated. And teacher because he taught Gandhiji Bhagavad Gita. And Gandhiji has said that, you know, Bhagavad Gita made a big difference in his life. His name was Sudhakar Chaturvedi. Chaturvedi essentially is one who knows all the, knows, not just reads. One who knows all Vedas is Chaturvedi, right? And Sudhakar Chaturvedi recollects that once when they were on a trip to Darjeeling, the bogies of the train disconnected from the engine and started rolling down because the train was going up. It started rolling down and there was absolute chaos there, right? All hell broke loose. And Gandhiji was sitting, continuing doing his translation, going about his work. So Sudhakar told him, Gandhiji, do you know what's going on? You know, there's probably going to be an accident and the result of that, maybe we get injured, die, whatever. Gandhiji said, yes, I am aware of what's going on, but we have to do what we have to do. I can't do anything about that train. It's beyond my power. So let God do what he has to do. Let us continue what we have to do. So that was his niyatam karma. And that action which he did without likes or dislikes, without attachment, without desire for any kind of fruit. The Bangalore surgeon also is a good example, right? At that point, there were none of these elements were there. And Bhagavan continues with Rajasic karma.
Yattu kamepsuna karma
Yattu kamepsuna karma
साहङ्कारेण वा पुनः
साहङ्कारेण वा पुनः
क्रियते बहुलायासं
क्रियते बहुलायासं
तद्राजसमुदाहृतम्
तद्राजसमुदाहृतम्
यत्तु कामेप्सुना कर्म साहङ्कारेण वा पुनः क्रियते बहुलायासं तद्राजसमुदाहृतम्.
Two, but in contrast, yet that karma action, kriyate, which is performed, kamepsuna, by one seeking to fulfill desires, sahankarena, prompted by ego, va, and punaha, then. Va normally means or, but in this context, and punaha, then, bahulayasam, becomes very strenuous. Tad, that udahritam, is declared rajasam, rajasic. But that action, which is performed by one seeking to fulfill desires, prompted by ego, and then what is performed becomes very strenuous. That is declared as rajasic. When there is an extreme sense of I, sahankarena, the ego, the ahankara, and fulfillment of selfish desires, kamepsuna, is sought while at every moment in the performance of that action. Even while performing the action, oh, I have to get this, I have to get this, right? Then in this kind of a situation, there is bahulayasam. There is a lot of stress, there is a lot of strain while performing the action. Because there is the constant worrying, thinking, stressing about what I want out of that action. And there is physical fatigue as a result of this, mental exhaustion as a result of this. See, a lot of action that we perform, we see that, right? There is so much of stress in its execution. And restlessness and anxiety, they become part and parcel of this kind of an action. Such an action is termed rajasic in nature. Also, when the attitude of the person when performing this action is like, this action is a tremendous action. It requires tremendous skill. It requires tremendous effort. Oh, it's a very complicated task. Only I can do it. I am the only one who's capable of doing it. That also is a rajasika nature. So one that where there is so much of selfishness that it causes stress, and one where there is so much of ego where, oh, only I am capable of doing it. See, we see all around us the activities of politicians, industrialists, right? Over enthusiastic, over anxious parents, fanatic preachers. There is fanaticism in religion, right? Then there is blind money makers. All these are rajasic type of actions. By the way, these actions are usually performed at their best. The quality of the action is very high. Just that, you have heard this thing about you climb the ladder and discover it was up the wrong one, right? So climbing the ladder was fantastic. It was done with precision, excellently executed, beautiful quality. But then you go up and say, hey, where am I? That's rajasic action. See, almost all Indians, the example that came to my mind was this Byju's, okay? Almost all Indians have heard about this Byju's because of either most Indians have young school going or college going children, and they give products for those kind of children. They've sponsored the Indian cricket team. Most Indians follow cricket. And the quote unquote, what do they call the, the $1 billion valuation, right? What is the word for it? That's the third one, right? So most Indians have heard about this. See, Byju's, they're supposed to be an edtech company. But do we see children going around saying, I learned so much from Byju's, using Byju's? Do we see that? Is it become, as much as they've become, what is the word? I'm missing that. As much as they have become unicorn, thanks to Shakra, okay? That kind of unicorn prevalence, do we see in the work that they do in terms of children learning and using what they have learned? You take a child who's learned Byju's and see what they've learned. Will Byju's take, So if we say, let's see an impact of what the child has studied over the last 1 year. Okay, let's do an impact analysis. Baidu will say, thank you very much and walk away, right? So, EdTech company. But in reality, what are they? They are a money-making machine through hype valuation. God only knows who will make that money, but that's what they are. Hopefully, they'll change because there is a chance to improve. Their auditor recently, for 2 years, their accounts were not signed because there was full of blind money-making techniques in the accounting. So even the auditor refused to sign it. The 2.5-year-old account got signed now, and the next 2 years are not yet signed, right? So this is an example of Rajasic kind of work, where you get totally into selfish aspect, where the student who is supposed to be the gainer of what we are offering is not gaining anything. But some other gaining is going on. Excellent achievement, by the way. Not to disregard the achievement in another arena, not in the arena of learning. And then we'll see what tamasic action is.
Anubandham shayam himsam.
Anubandham shayam himsam.
Anaveksha cha paurusham.
Anaveksha cha paurusham.
Mohadarabhyate karma.
Mohadarabhyate karma.
Yattattamasamuchyate.
Yattattamasamuchyate.
Anubandham shayam himsam. Anaveksha cha paurusham. Mohadarabhyate karma. Yattattamasamuchyate.
Tat, that. Karma, action. Yat, which. Arabhyate, is undertaken. Muhad, with delusion. Anaveksha, without regard to. Anubandham, consequence. Shayam, loss. Himsam, injury. Cha, and. Paurusham, even one's own ability. Uchyate is declared tamasam, tamasic. So Bhagavan says that action which is undertaken with delusion, without regard to consequence, loss, injury, and also one's own ability or capacity, is declared as tamasic. See, before I go here, the previous example of Byju's. See, I don't want to mistake, because my company is also a tech, right? We struggle with it, making sure that the child learns based on what we are doing is very tough. It's not easy. I'm taking medicine, but is there impact of that medicine? Well, the tests have to prove, and my health has to improve. Similarly, when I'm learning in the brain, what is the impact of what I'm learning? Is there actual learning happening? Is very difficult to. But people who are in this field should be committed towards working towards that. And I hope that all players do that, because that is when the sanctity of the field will be maintained. Anyway, coming to tamasic, that action which is undertaken with delusion, without regard to consequence, loss, injury, and also one's own ability, is declared as tamasic. See, when action is performed without care for loss, which is kshayam, or injury, which is himsam, that would be caused to other creatures, other elements of creation. There is injury to them, but we continue to take the action without any care. Okay, irrespective of the fact that there is injury to other creatures. By what? By our action, not by something else. Nor paying heed to one's own capacity or ability, paurusham. See, these are careless or irresponsible actions that do not pay heed to consequences. Anubandham. There is no responsibility towards what is going to happen because of those actions. And it is undertaken because of delusory misconception. Mohad arabhyate. So there is delusion. You don't even consider. You're either ignorant or unaware, or even if there is an awareness, it's kind of blindsided. Such actions are declared tamasic in nature. Like Yudhishthira rolling the dice, blindsiding Krishna, right, is tamasic action. habitual reckless indulgence to appease senses. For my taste, habitual and reckless for that 2 inches of that tongue. Drinking, alcoholic drinking, I mean, gambling, rape, corruption. These are examples that we see around us of tamasic action. There are bigger examples too, by the way, like the current war in Ukraine. Okay, the consequences of this current war in Ukraine, we'll get to know after a few years or so. But there is another war that was fought, which we know the consequences of today. This quote unquote war on terror. Okay. See, this war on terror example I chose for this tamasic behavior, right? It was launched by America in 2011 after the gruesome and barbaric 9/11 attacks. The 9/11 attacks were absolutely barbaric. To take a plane and crash it into a building and killing thousands of people is nothing but barbaric. But after 20 years, almost all the steps that were taken under the so-called war on terror, they have been rolled back. And what is the result? The number of terrorist organizations have only gone up. Hate has only fostered hate. There is this representative, US House of Representatives, Barbara Lee. I had seen this on Netflix, by the way. She had, on September 14th, 2001, which was 3 days after those attacks, using hijacked planes, which were quite horrendous, by the way, she opposed the law for introduction of use of military force, authorization for use of military force. That was a law that was introduced by then President Bush. And she said, let us take a step back. Is this what Americans want? Is this what humanity wants? But anyway, that law was introduced. And this war on terror has cost $2.3 trillion. It has taken lives of 2,500 soldiers, out of which 90+% are Americans, by the way. 150,000 Afghans. And very few of those 150,000 are actual terrorists. So more good people. The 9/11 attacks, in contrast, it killed 2,977 people and 19 hijackers, of course. Okay. And Barbara now says that the authorization to use military force has been used 41 times in 19 countries that were not connected to 9/11 at all. There's one more thing, by the way. This Guantanamo is not just a place. It's a concept. As of 2021, there were 780 detainees held at Guantanamo Bay since 2002. That's what, 20 years. Okay. Out of the 780, 741 have been released by American administrations. Out of the remaining 39, 2 have been convicted by military commissions. 780 detained over a period of number of years, decade plus, right? These people were tortured, okay? May not have been to the extent of the concentration camps that were there, but they were tortured. And it is now clear that those methods, when you torture human beings, they don't yield any information. For example, this Iraq's imaginary Iraq, what is that called? Weapon of mass destruction. That decimated Iraq itself, right? But where are the weapons of mass destruction? So these are tamasic actions. Brenda Breckman, she fought in the, she is the New York Fire Department. She was right after those attacks, she was out there in the site saving people. She says, and I quote, "I hope we don't forget how our country came together to help each other after 9/11. This was before we decided to retaliate, that we are going to retaliate. We have so many lessons to learn from 9/11. But we should not think that hate is ever a good response. It is only love." See, humanity has a lot to think. Even if it is war, okay? Now, we said Arjuna has to fight this righteous war, right? So even if it is war, if it brings everlasting peace, or at least peace for centuries, okay, by eliminating adharmic forces, it is known that, and well recorded in history, that Mahabharata, after that, there were hundreds of years of beautiful, peaceful living. That kind of war, it can be termed as a righteous war, because it resulted in hundreds of years of till human beings spoiled it for themselves, right? But how do we know whether our actions are right, yes or not? How can we know that? By discarding tamas, eschewing rajas, and adopting or abiding by sattva. And Bhagavan has said that it is the karma chodana and the karma sangraha. The karma chodana or the trigger of action, and karma sangraha or the basis of action. Those are the three kinds or triads that are involved in action. The Atman itself is not involved in the action. Atman is akarta. These things which cause actions are controlled by human beings. They are controlled by human beings because of their nature and by the choices that the human beings make because of the nature. So there's a lot that human beings have to do in today's world to think on these lines. What is the kind of nature we are adopting? What are we eschewing? Are we eschewing sattva? Are we discarding sattva? Are we discarding tamas? Are we eschewing rajas? What are we doing? And what are the choices we are making? Because 20 years later, the choice that the American government made, can somebody question that choice today? What has happened? Have they destroyed terrorism? War on terror was won or lost? By the way, Taliban is back in Afghanistan. So it was lost. America lost that war. So what is the use of a tamasic action is the question that human beings have taken. So now, having described jnanam and karma, Bhagavan now comes to karta. That we will see in our next satsang. Hari Om, Shri Krishna.
We'll repeat today's verses. Chapter 18, verse 18 to 25. Jnanam jneyam parijñāta trivida karma chodana karanam karma kartiti trivida karma sangraha jnanam karma cha karta cha tridaiva guna bhedataha prochyate guna sankhyane yatavacchrunutanyapi sarvabhuteshu yenaikam bhavamavyayamikshati avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajnanam viddhi satvikam vritattvena tu yajnanam nana bhavan pridagvedhan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tajnanam viddhi rajasam yattu krishnavade kasmin karye saktamahaitukam atatvartavadalpam cha tattamasamudahritam niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshatakritam apalaprepsuna karma yattat sattvikamukhyate yattu kamepsuna karma sahankarena va punaha kriyate bahulayasam tadrajasamudahritam anubandham shayam himsam anavekshya cha paurusham mohadarabhyate karma yattattamasamuchyate. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnamevavashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, or comments? So my only request is that, like I said earlier, some of these verses, they must be dwelt in, because Bhagavan is breaking it down, and excellent learning for us in terms of how to identify and how to delineate from this aspect of ego. It's very good learning and good practice. I'm sorry if some of the examples were not appreciated, but you are welcome to think of your own examples. But I wanted to think of some hard examples which make these points, explain these points. Thank you. If there are no thoughts or comments, then we will meet next Saturday. Next Saturday, I'll be back home in India. So we'll do satsang from India. Thank you. We'll see you all next Saturday. Hari Om.